And now it's time for Judge Joe Brown. He's the real deal in the courtroom today.
I sold her a car. She didn't make the payments. I repoed it.
He didn't want payments. He wanted sex.
A woman who wants a refund on her luxury car gets a repo instead. Salesperson Robert Bailey is suing his former customer for car payments and fees. Defendant Pamela Monroe is countersuing for money paid to the plaintiff. Now, here's Judge Joe Brown.
Tell me your story. What kind of business are we running here?
Sir, I'm the source. I do cars on the side. I do anything in bass. I'm the #1 swimming pool salesman in 13 states. This lady
I thought you'd make a good salesman. Go ahead.
This lady came in with a song and dance story about she was a prophetess and she was helping battered women get back into society.
When did she buy the car?
The first initial deposit was on 7/24/07.
7/24/07. She says she was an evangelist, right?
That is correct.
She needed that to get around.
That is correct.
All right. Now, did you or did you not hire her daughter during the month of August, the following month, to work for you, the witness over here?
Yes, Your Honor. I needed part-time help. I asked Pamela if she had a lady that maybe needed to get back in society. She said, I have a daughter that's experienced, personable, and would be an ideal employee. She did work a couple of days, and she spent most of her time talking on the telephone and personal business with her boyfriend.
Okay. You do pool sales. You also, on the side, as a side business, you sell used cars. What do? Get them at auction?
No, Your Honor. From individual dealers, people that I've trained over the years.
Do you acquire them at auction or just as you can, or do you broker the sale of used vehicles?
I broker the sale mostly, Your Honor. I do not buy them at auction.
You broker the sales of the used vehicles, so you're acting on behalf of somebody, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Was that the situation with this particular C230 Mercedes?
No, Your Honor. I had full possession of this vehicle and had used it and had the title.
Was that your personal vehicle that you had acquired at some time that you were selling?
I used several vehicles, Your Honor. It was one of the vehicles that I had driven.
All right. So you were contacted by the defendant. How did you come to contact the plaintiff?
Oh, I live in Fayetteville, North Carolina. I was driving down a street and I saw the Mercedes sitting up on a hill, and it was isolated, but there were several other cars parked in the yard.
Was there a for sale sign on it?
No, there was not a for sale sign on it.
How did you learn that the plaintiff may have had some interest in that vehicle?
There was for sale signs on other cars in the yard also. Some of them had for sale signs, some didn't.
Okay, it was a yard full of cars with for sale signs on them. How many cars?
Oh, about 4 cars in the yard.
4 cars in the yard. Did you then contact the plaintiff?
I drove up into the yard and I was looking at the Mercedes, and Mr. Bailey came out and started telling me about how much the car was and that it was for sale. And I asked him how much it was, and he told me that it was $13,000, but for you, pretty lady, it's $11,000 today.
Okay, $11,000. Now, do we attempt to enter into an agreement to sell this vehicle for $11,000?
Yes, I did, Your Honor.
All right, now, go from that point.
She gave me a $1,000 check, which was returned. She gave me a $500 check that was returned twice. She gave me a she left a $332 check at my office, which was returned.
Did any checks at all clear?
Yes, Your Honor. Well, she came and paid one of the $1,000 checks. She came and paid the $1,000 check.
And did you sell this vehicle for $7,500?
Yes, sir. After considerable expense and repairs to it, Your Honor.
All right. Now, please did you give me the documentation on your expense?
I believe it's in that, Your Honor. She drove the vehicle over 15,000 miles, Your Honor.
15,000.
She must have lived in it from all of the evidence, or 4,000 miles a week. And she never came back with the insurance to transfer the title, Your Honor. She was given permission to drive on my plate.
You gave me a block notice vehicle tax bill. That's on the block of the vehicles that you customarily have on average on your front yard that you sell, right?
That's the registration for the plate.
Dealer's reassignment of title to a motor vehicle.
Yes, sir. Where she signed it at the bottom.
Right.
I never signed any title. I hadn't signed anything other than the receipt that he gave me where I paid him,
Since you interject,
because I never received any paperwork on the car at all.
well, I will come to you in a minute, but since she interjects, pass that to her and ask her if that reflects her signature or a copy or a photocopy thereof.
No, that is not my signature.
That's not your signature. Well, let me ask you this. You had the vehicle?
Yes, sir, I did.
And the vehicle was parked in front of your house?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's hear from your witness. Come on up.
Janae.
Stop being glamorous. Now what you have to do, don't worry, you may get discovered just in case. Now, you do research for the plaintiff, right?
Right.
You say you're an investigator, Rim?
I don't claim to be an investigator. I just, if Bob asked me, because sometimes we have to repo on cars, he asked me, you know, why don't you drive out there and see if the car's parked out there? And then I'll call and let him know if it is. Some people haven't paid up to like 6 months to a year on a vehicle.
Tell me what you did.
Well, I was out running errands for Bob one day, and I was around her neighborhood, and I was like, you want me to stop by her house and see if the car's parked out there? Of course it wasn't, and I was like, well, if she was smart, she'd park it a complex or two over because they have the big giant fences in front of it. So I drove around, and there it was in the next complex over. So I
An
called,
apartment complex.
in the next one over, but they have huge, like, tall wood fences.
So you found the vehicle and
Yeah,
called
I
him.
drove around, and then he told me what to look for, black Mercedes, and it said Prophetess on the front of the plate, and there it was sitting there. So I called the tow company, and then of course informed Bob, and then they come out, hooked it up, and took it away.
We'll be right back with Judge Joe Brown.
Well, I got his criminal background record. He's on probation with the state that we live in for selling false cars, false documentation. And I have his proof right here.
That is not
I went
correct,
to the
Your Honor.
License and Theft Bureau and filed a complaint against him because
What was the basis of your complaint?
the basis of my complaint was that I do not owe him for this because he sold me the car. That's when the sexual harassment started coming.
It's Joe time after this.
We're back with Judge Joe Brown. The plaintiff in this case says his former customer came in admiring a Mercedes he had for sale. He says he repoed the vehicle and sold it after the defendant failed to complete payment. Let's take a look.
Now, you sold this vehicle again for $7,500.
Yes, Your Honor, I had a number of repairs in addition to replacing the radio at $355, I believe it was.
Which was my radio that I put in the car.
Not yours once you put it in the car, belongs to the car. If you came and took it out when you came and got your property, then
It was never on there. When I leave out, it's got a pull-out
yes,
face.
it's one of those that for security purposes you
Yeah.
take the plate face off of it and go. But if you install the device, you can't take it out once you install it. It becomes a fixture.
Okay.
So you had to replace the radio that she removed, $355. There was one that was originally in there that you don't have any contrary contention relative to, that you took out to put the new one in.
Right, because it
Now,
wasn't working.
Well, it may not have been, but in any event, what else did you do in terms of repair?
Had to put tires, Your Honor, and a number of small...
15,000 miles on the vehicle.
She put 22,000 miles on it.
22,000.
Further research, Your Honor, after I got into this. At the time of the delivery, the mileage...
In 4 months?
Yes, Your Honor. That sounds far-fetched, but when I'm in the pool season, I put that many miles on 4,000 or 5,000 miles a month.
15,000 or 22,000 will wear out a set of tires. So how much did you pay for the tires?
Probably $200.
50 a tire.
My wholesale was about $200.
Anything else?
Your Honor, I have the original title application signed by Pamela and notarized that she says it was not her signature, but this is the original.
I'm noticing the notary seal down here on this document. It's here. She says it's not hers. This is also another notarized document.
That is not my signature. That's a forgery like the other stuff before. That is not my signature.
Okay, let's go to you. What do you have to say? You may defend yourself.
Well, first of all, Mr. Bailey sold me this car. It was not even his car to sell because he had gotten it from a woman to sell on consignment. And according to...
He said he's a broker.
Your Honor, that's not correct.
Excuse me. He said he's a broker. There's nothing illegal about being a broker, and that's why I asked him, because you raised it. If you're brokering for somebody, you may sell on consignment.
But he wasn't supposed to be selling at all. Okay,
Why?
Well, I got his criminal background record. He's on probation with the state that we live in for selling false cars, false documentation, and I have his proof right here.
That is not correct,
I went to the
Your Honor.
License and Theft Bureau and filed a complaint against him because...
What was the basis of your complaint?
The basis of my complaint was that I do not owe him for this because he sold me the car under false pretenses. Then he sexually harassed me.
Under false pretenses, so what is the false pretense?
Well, he never gave me any title, any
So you're claiming
documentation.
he had no title to the vehicle?
Well, he didn't. He didn't give me any documentation on my car. First of all, no title, no tags.
I'm looking at it.
But I didn't sign that. That's not my signature. I have my signature on other documents.
Look, let me ask you this question. Whether or not you signed it, did you or did you not have the vehicle?
I had the vehicle, yes,
How
sir.
did you manage to have the vehicle?
When I came to him that day and he sold me the vehicle,
So what was the price
receipt.
for the vehicle?
$11,000.
How much have you paid him?
I paid him $3,500 in down payment and
how
the monthly
many of those
payments.
checks cleared?
Well, I only wrote 2 checks to him.
Oh,
One-
yes, he said $1,000 and he said $500.
I gave
I'm
him
looking at
$1,000 in
the checks
cash.
right now, the actual checks, physical instruments in my hand, and it's noted how many times each was returned.
2, but as you will see on there, the 2 checks that I wrote him were post-dated for the 10th. He processed the check immediately, okay? And he said that, you know, he was not going to post, you know, I could post-date the check.
So what is wrong with the vehicle? Are you saying the vehicle is a stolen vehicle?
Well, when I drove the vehicle, he said I was free to drive on his license and tags until he could get me my paperwork.
That's what this is. Did you go to DMV?
I couldn't because he didn't give me any documentation on the car after I asked him for a bill of sale. I asked him for the title. I could not register it. That is why I was driving on his tags in the first place. Then, a couple of days after I had the car, I got stopped by the police for fictitious tags. The tags that he had on the car did not even belong to that car. And the VIN number was registered to someone else.
That's what's in here. That's what's reflected in all the records.
But it didn't belong to the Mercedes. The tags belonged to another car that was in his yard, and they were his personal tags. And actually the car belonged to someone else. And I got stopped. The day that I went to sign, that I gave him my money, I gave him $1,000 in cash. Here is my receipt.
He says you did.
Okay,
And
but
he says
also
he got
said-
another $1,000. That leaves $9,000 due and owing. So from that point when you acquire the car until 4 months later when his skip tracer locates the car concealed in the parking lot of a large apartment complex behind a fence, which you acknowledge was there because you concealed it. You also have spoken falsely because under oath you say that, and under oath you give me in writing that it was parked in front of your home.
It was in my parking lot, sir, and I would not give him
You
the car
don't
back
live there because
there
we
was a-
checked. We've got an address. You don't live there.
Not anymore. I moved. And here is, you know, my witness here that my daughter went to work for him because he said he didn't have a secretary, which is why he could not give me any paperwork. After all these 4 months, I never got paperwork on the car. And that's why I asked him repeatedly, can you give me my paperwork?
Evangelist, in 4 months, why didn't
arrange?
you go back and return the vehicle and demand your money back instead of hiding it?
I kept asking him to give me my money back or give me my paper. That's when the sexual harassment started coming.
Sexual harassment?
Yes.
You don't work for him.
It doesn't matter. He was still
You
sexually
running
harassing
from him.
me.
He's hired a skip tracer to go find you.
He didn't have to. I wasn't running from him with the car.
You just told me you moved.
I refused.
Reason I got the wrong address on our records was because you'd moved.
I just moved last week, sir.
Last week?
Yes, sir.
Why then, if he knows where you are to sexually harass you, does he have to have somebody go look for the vehicle to find you?
He didn't have to have anybody to find me. First of all, he was...
She just testified to it.
Sir, he did not have to have anybody to come. I live in a very large apartment complex. The car wasn't hidden.
We'll be back with more Judge Joe Brown in a moment.
Let me say this. I worked for Bob Bailey for a month, approximately. The reason why I can honestly say that that is not my mother's signature, the reason why I started working for him because he did not have a secretary to draw up the paperwork for my mother.
Closed captioning sponsored by...
We're back with Judge Joe Brown. The defendant in this case says she purchased a vehicle from the plaintiff but never received the paperwork or the proper title. She says before she could get straight with the plaintiff, her new car disappeared out of the parking lot. Let's take a look.
What do you have to say? I'll hear from you and then we will wrap this up.
Sir, let me say this. I worked for Bob Bailey for a month, approximately. The reason why I can honestly say that that is not my mother's signature, the reason why I started working for him because he did not have a secretary to draw up the paperwork for my mother.
May not be your mother's signature. Let's take that premise as correct. Was that somebody masquerading as your mother that had been driving the car? Was that somebody masquerading for your mother that signed these checks down here and tendered it had to be sent through several times, only one of which cleared? Well, none of them cleared, one of which was redeemed. Was that somebody masquerading as your mother?
No, that wasn't anyone masquerading as my mother.
Now, by the way, you give me this whole thing, and you see, you give me these charges. It looks bad, but it's all going dismissed by DA, dismissed by DA, dismissed by DA, speeding 73 in a 55 zone pending, set for trial, speeding 76 in a zone, and they go back years, for God's sake. What did you do? Go back forever on this man? All this stuff is dismissed except traffic.
No, there's some felons in there where he was convicted for doing the very same thing.
Where? There's not one. Every single one in here is dismissed. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. Going around trying to spread the gospel being of an evangelist, and you want to come up here with this technical excuse to me for doing wrong.
I paid payments to him. I made my down payment. He never gave me...
Arguments are over.
Judge Joe Brown makes his ruling after this.
Did a former lover wreck your life and your credit? Call 877-JOE'S-LAW or visit JudgeJoeBrown.com.
The fact of the matter is, ma'am, evangelist or otherwise, whether he needed a secretary, ma'am, or not for a part-time business, you kept the car for 4 months, put between 15 and 22,000 miles on it. You got the valid documentation you needed at the point you went out of there with knowingly having issued him some checks with insufficient funds to clear them. And by the way, there are 2 submissions in here after the effective date on the check.
Your Honor,
So
I
he got paid
those.
$2,000. You sold the vehicle for $7,500. That leaves a deficiency of $1,500 in the remaining $9,000. I count $882 in cost that you incurred trying to repossess the vehicle and sell it. The $882 with the $1,500 delinquency works out at $2,382, and you will get that and your cost. And enough on that. Judgment accordingly, $1,882 in your actions, and your counterclaim is denied. You get your judgment.
And this courtroom is now in recess. The defendant presented the judge with what she believed would prove the plaintiff was a shady dealer. The judge says those charges were dismissed, and the bottom line is she didn't pay. She's going to now. We'll be right back. We're back. The defendant in this case says after buying the car, she did some checking into the plaintiff's background and didn't like what she saw. The judge looked it over and did not like what he saw from the defendant. She'll pay.
For information on future cases or to contact this court, check out our website at judgejoebrown.com.